All right, this is Bonehead.
No, it's because I'm second hearing you,
Welcome.
jackass. I wanted to hear that voice so I could say, welcome to Bonehead.
Well, he talked all over me. I was doing the intro. And
I
he
know,
just
but I had
talked.
helium in my mouth and I wanted to be able to talk like this.
What's the difference?
By Microsoft.
That voice, by the way, is way better than his normal one. I know if you do it all the time, it causes brain damage. And there is that case where that college student died of it. But Chad, can you just risk it for the good of Bonehead?
So seriously, what does it really cause brain damage?
Dude,
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a kid
it
that
cuts off
commits suicide. There's a kid that
I've
commits
never
suicide in
done
college.
it.
There's an
So,
entire legal case about it. You want me to just teach legal higher ed law for a minute? Yeah, there's an
No
entire legal
way.
case.
James likes his putting hot dogs up his butthole.
That is not true.
No, he likes them on the grill.
Everybody froze. Uh-oh.
I didn't freeze.
I'm
You
not froze either. It's just Chad who's freezing.
It's Chad. Oh, there he moved again.
There he's
Yeah,
back
I'm
again.
freezing.
He's a witch. Burn him. Oh, wait, no.
The
Leave it.
internet, along with my emotions, are unstable.
Mm.
So
Somebody
back to
needs
the
to hire
hot
me,
dogs.
Ryder.
So did somebody have hot dogs?
I didn't. I had
Yeah,
for
right up,
dinner,
right up his butthole. Should I be concerned that this helium is going this long?
I would. I think,
No,
matter of
I
fact,
wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'd take a couple of Tylenol and just kind of, walk it off.
yeah.
I think that's how it works. Or aspirin, whatever you like.
my dog ran
Elite.
out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably because they didn't want to breathe all that helium.
So the dog, because the dog had attended James's lecture on the case.
Yeah, the university did. They filed a lawsuit. against
Holy
the university
cow.
for not taking it away.
Listen, Bendy can tell us about it later.
Huh?
Isn't that Chad's dog's name?
Yep. Oh, I thought you were talking about Steve Irwin's daughter. Is
What
it
are we
her
talking
name?
about
Welcome to
today?
Bonehead.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not making
Yeah.
it up.
What is our topic today, gentlemen?
Screechy
Sound-
noises? Oh, yeah. Soundtracks is what y'all call them. Screechy noises.
Screechy noises. Yeah, soundtrack. So we love movies. We actually talked about, songs before that there used to be movies that would have songs written for the movie, but we're going to talk about some movies where the soundtrack is, what's the word? So intertwined with the film that you can't think of the music and the movie separately.
Right.
And I, this is not what I was going to talk about, but I'll just throw this out as an example. I hope I'm not taking this from anyone, but
I
The
got
Graduate.
Kool-Aid in a McDonald's cup, so you just keep going.
The Graduate, Simon and Garfunkel. It's kind of hard
Overrated.
to separate those two. Well, but it's hard to separate those two.
Not The
Are you talking about-
Graduate, just Simon and Garfunkel.
Well, I think it's because Simon brought him down.
Pretty much.
I
I mean,
mean,
look what Garfunkel went on to do.
And you never hear people complain about Garfunkel. There's some people that say Paul Simon has done some shady things, but you never hear somebody say, let me tell you what Garfunkel did.
That's
I don't
true.
know. Have you seen Carnal Knowledge?
I actually have. I have with Jack Nicholson.
Good for you. Pat yourself on the back.
Have you seen it?
Don't tell him to do
Well,
that.
there you go.
He'll pull an arm muscle.
I have seen it. So
But-
there are.
But yeah, but that's just an example. But
yeah,
most
that's
people-
one. I
most
doubt that
people would
anybody
say
else.
it doesn't work as well. Like there's something about that soundtrack. You hear some of the songs used in that film, and it immediately you just know it's Simon and Garfunkel.
You say immediately?
Immediately. I have suffered. It's been a long day, folks.
Now, I know Grease was a musical, but I actually think Grease as well. I mean, some of those songs you just kind of start singing along. Probably.
Yeah.
What's
You're
another
the one that I want to hunt.
Well, I was about to say, and I'll be honest.
You say I'm the one I want to hunt.
Oh my
Yes,
God, that is the best
exactly
one.
That is
what
the
I
one.
said.
You're the one I want to hunt. Woo!
Oh my God, we
Kill,
need to
kill,
do.
kill.
That's the
We need to
soundtrack from
do-
Hard Target.
No, I was say we need to do the Most Dangerous Game, the musical.
You're the one I want to hunt.
Yeah, I think we can write this right now. Now, listen, if you people are listening to this and steal our ideas,
We're going to
We'll-
sue you, and you're
Yeah,
going to
but we're-
win.
yeah, we probably weren't going to follow through. We'll probably settle out of court. It takes too much time not
Yeah.
to, but
Right.
we'll settle reasonably. So just take our idea. That's fine.
He'll
I
he'll
mean-
settle for a Diet Coke.
No, I won't. I need some dollars. I got bills to pay.
He'll settle for $1 so he could get that McDonald's large Diet Coke.
Sir, you're forgetting taxes. Do you think I'm going to be on the hook for the taxes?
No, that's
I
true.
think not. Put your hand in my pocket, and I'll make sure all you bring back is a bloody stump. Thank you, Harlan Olsen.
So we were talking about soundtracks, and I was trying to compile my list. Should I go for the best or what I really like? because it's unfortunate that those two things aren't necessarily the same.
Well, I was about to say, and I think that's the problem.
Because I don't know that I have good taste when it comes to a lot of music.
But I think that's the problem too, though, is that there are some soundtracks that have great songs on them.
Yes.
But they're great songs, and it has nothing to do with the fact they're in a movie, right?
Well, yeah, and then there's some movie soundtracks where you don't even hear the songs that are on the soundtrack, or they just put them onto the album.
Right. Oh
Or
man,
there's some movies that use songs that never end up on the soundtrack, right? I mean, one of my favorite songs that was used in the movie Free Enterprise over the closing credits is called Satellite by Laura Christie, a British performing artist. And that song's not on the soundtrack. It's not anywhere. It's not on her solo albums. The people where it's available, where you can listen to it online, it's because they ripped it off of the closing credits of the obscure Free Enterprise movie. And that's it. And so I think that's a point that we have to make, because that's the only thing I struggled with, because I'm like, I love movie soundtracks. Actually, that's what I used to buy when I would buy CDs. I would tend to buy movie soundtracks because they tended to have a pretty good mix of music. They would have, and I do like all types of music. So it was a way for me to get, I can get a little bit of classic stuff. I can get some modern stuff. I can get hip hop. I can get all that stuff. And I can do it through soundtracks and connect it to movies I love. So I loved soundtracks, but kind of echoing off of Joe, that's what the challenge for this was for me, because obviously I'm like, oh, Ghostbusters. But outside of one song, do I immediately hear those songs and go, oh yeah. Do I know they're in Ghostbusters? Sure. But am I ever sitting around going, you know what I really want to listen to is track 4?
Well,
I don't know what track 4 is.
And so, for when I put mine together, I did the latter. I just did soundtracks that I owned and that I listened to repeatedly, just because every song on the album was amazing. And in my case, in all three of my cases, well, maybe not one, but more, at least two of mine, the songs were exclusively featured in the movie, so they do connect to the movie. So, like when I'm listening to the songs, I'm seeing the scenes from those movies.
So, who wants to go first? You want me to go first? Because sure. I was trying to think, and the issue is my song and my movie are intertwined completely, but there are others, and we only remember the one song, but there are several other songs in the movie that are also on the soundtrack that are all written by and performed by the same guy that wrote the one song. But may I say that we are eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking, and we're going to do what they say can't be done. That song and that movie are intertwined. I don't know that you can think of one without the other. Agreed? And it was written specifically for what? Smokey and the Bandit. Smokey and the Bandit is one of my favorite movies of all time. Don't apologize for it. I can still watch it whenever it's on. Is it a great film? Probably not. But is still it came out in 77, and the thing that people forget is there was only one movie that made more money in 77. Star Wars. That was it. That was the only movie that made more money in 77. So Jerry Reed wrote Eastbound and Down, and I was like, that's not the only song. No, there's a ton of them. Hold on, let me pull up the list. I had it all here, and then I completely just skipped over it. Then there's Westbound and Down, Legend, Orange Blossom Special, Hot Pants Parade, right? But I forget that there's Eastbound and Down and Westbound and Down, because it plays differently depending on which way they're going once they've got to Texarkana and back. Yep. So, little bit of trivia. Jerry Reed was originally going to play who? Do you guys know this?
Bandit.
The Bandit, right? And he
did in the best movie of the franchise.
No, that's low. So he was originally going to play the Bandit, and the problem, Hal Needham had lived in Burt Reynolds' guest house for about 10 years after I can't remember his first or second wife left him, and they were dear friends. What?
I was thinking about this, by the way. That entire line that you just said. If I ended up divorced tomorrow, Which
Yeah.
one of you all is going to let me be like, no, just live in the basement for the next decade?
Well, neither one of us have a guest house, and Chad doesn't have a basement, so
Nope.
So what you're saying is, if I dig one and don't tell him, I should be able to slip in and out of it.
basically, you could be the minor
Yeah.
49er, like a mole that lives underneath Chad's foundation. So it was going to be Jerry Reed. And then finally Bert said yes. And then of course it became a $1 million low budget film to a Universal picture, because Burt Reynolds in the 70s, we forget sometimes, was the biggest star of the 70s. He was a huge movie star. He was the biggest star on the planet for about 10 years there, 5-10 years. And then we got Smokey and the Bandit. And I think another reason, and I know I'm not really talking about the music so much, but all those songs were written just for that movie quickly. And Jerry Reed was a successful singer and songwriter. You took the gold, she got the gold mine, I got the shaft.
The gold mine.
What's another one?
We split it all down the middle, and she got the
better half. It's the second time, by the way, that's come up in the last 2 weeks in random conversation with me.
What's great about that song is that song ends the same way as When You're Hot, You're Hot. Because it ends with him at one point screaming the line, who's going to collect my welfare check?
Yep.
Because he's being sentenced to jail. But
Amos Moses, there's a bunch of them. I advise anyone.
I call my son Amos Moses on occasion. If you've never listened to Jerry Reed, by the way, you should.
You should.
And then go directly into Roger Miller too. Just do them both. Make your own call. I love both of them, but Amos
stretching
Moses,
a little on the Roger Miller, but Roger Miller's fun. Jerry Reed was a true artist.
No, both of them were artists.
Yeah.
I refer you to the fact both of them, I believe, did the Muppet Show and watch both.
Oh yeah, okay. I can't argue. And Jerry Reed was also in Scooby Doo Mysteries.
Oh yeah,
movie. Yeah. So
Little Mary Sunshine.
Little Mary Sunshine. She's all right with me. Anyway, that's one of my favorite soundtracks. I love Jerry Reed. I love the movie. Who's next?
James, go ahead.
I'm going to start with one that I honestly don't think needs an introduction, but I'm going to introduce it anyway. The movie.
The man who needs no introduction. It's James.
The movie is not overly good, but the soundtrack is phenomenal. And I mentioned this before on the show, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. Just about 4 or 5 hours. No, it's Blues Brothers 2000. The movie's not great by any stretch of the meaning.
No.
But that soundtrack, and I love the Blues Brothers. Blues Brothers probably is one of those movies that I wish would have, we got a franchise out of more than just 2 movies and a pilot for a cartoon that 4 people have seen.
I've never seen the cartoon.
It was odd backstory. There was a video game that was made off of the cartoon that never got made, but they were going back and forth between doing a Men in Black cartoon, which is what they did, or a Blues Brothers cartoon. They went with Men in Black.
That seems like a better financial.
I mean, for kids, yeah. I was sitting there, I'm like, if you're gonna if there's a Blues Brothers cartoon, it's going to have to be on something like Adult Swim or HBO Max. Anyway, for it to be, and I think that's the issue with Blues Brothers 2000. Blues Brothers is R and still would be R today, and they made a PG-13. Anyway,
they made a kids movie out of it.
Yeah, the soundtrack, and oddly enough, I was reading today, its reviews keep going up over time, probably because people have kids and they want to watch something like that, but they can't watch the original. Anyway,
but literally, they made one of the stars is a kid. They made a kid
he basically starts to become a father figure. They basically took a hardened criminal. I mean, he's not as bad as Jake was, but Elwood is not a great guy. And they turned him into a father figure.
Why was there such? I actually don't know anything, and this is getting off topic, but we are bonehead. Why did they make such a 180 on that? Between Blues Brothers and Blues Brothers 2000, could they only get the money if they did a PG-13? Are they playing to the audience that only saw it on TBS for the last 20 years?
Well, I was about to say, and by the way, I wish if somebody has access to this, because I know for a while Universal was tempted to release a PG-13 cut of the original, because I want to watch it with my kids.
Well, they did that with Saturday Night Fever. Saturday Night Fever had 2 cuts. It had the R cut, which came out in the theater, and then they released a PG cut.
Yeah, and I wish they would do something like that, because I'd love to be able, like if it was on Netflix, that I could watch the old TBS cut, because that's how I first saw it. And then I saw it when I was older, and I'm like, this is A, way better. But B, I'm glad I watched it when I was younger, and I could just see all the car chases and all that stuff.
I'm sure I saw it that way too in TBS first time.
But Blues Brothers 2000, I would argue, if you like rhythm and blues, is hands down probably one of the top 10 movie soundtracks that uses that heavily. Probably because the talent they got on that. So the first Blues Brothers movie has Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles. I mean, it has a lot of great talent, and they pop up on the soundtrack.
Scatman, right? No, not Scatman. Cab Calloway.
Cab Calloway, Minnie the Moocher. I mean, and I own both of these soundtracks, and I love them both. But Blues Brothers 2000 does something the first one didn't do. And it doesn't work well in the movie, but on the soundtrack, if you're just driving somewhere and you want a good CD to listen to, it introduces the Florida Gator Boys. I'm sorry, Louisiana Gator Boys. Who is in the Louisiana Gator Boys? I will not name them all. It's just too huge, but it's B.B. King, Isaac Hayes, Dr. John, Travis Tritt, Gary U.S. Bonds, Bo Diddley, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Vaughn, all of them. And the end of that movie is they're competing against the Blues Brothers band.
Yeah.
And in the movie, you're like, well, obviously this is going to end one way, right? I didn't pay for a movie called The Louisiana Gator Boys. But the movie ends with actually the Blues Brothers. They all do a song together and all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily work on film, but on the soundtrack, when you have, and we know that later on, B.B. King and Eric Clapton did do an album together, which is great. I own it as well. Riding with the King. That being said, that song and that entire soundtrack, Blues Traveler does a song for it. Dr. John does Season of the Witch, and no offense meant. I know, Joe. I know you love Donovan. I know you're going to get mad, Joe. You're going to have to deal with it.
I actually do like Donovan, though.
I do too, actually. I mean, I played Atlantis for my kids.
I do. I love Atlantis. I love it.
But and I do. Actually, my mom loves Sunshine Superman. That's how I found out about Donovan.
It's another good classic. And he also gave us Ione Sky.
Yep. So anyway, but Dr. John's cover of Season of the Witch for the Blues Brothers soundtrack is, I also love Halloween songs. And by that, I mean, I call them Halloween carols, songs that you should play near Halloween. I used to, on my Facebook, I would post one every day. Hey, you should listen to this. Occasionally Twitter, we do it on Twitter. That being said, I hold Dr. John's Season of the Witch, that gravelly voice, him belting out about the Season of the Witch, plays so well as a blues song, but it also works well for Halloween. If you've never seen the movie, don't rush out, because you're going to be, if you're a fan of the original, you're going to be disappointed. But ignore that. If you have seen it, or if you haven't, ignore all of that. Listen to the soundtrack. That soundtrack is at least an 8 or 9, if not a 10 on the soundtrack scale for a movie that, and I love the Blues Brothers. I own Blues Brothers 2000. It's over here on the shelf, but it's about at a 5. I mean, and I'm probably being generous.
Yeah, it's fun with the kids. It's fun with the kids, or to reminisce a little bit, but it's surely lacking. Also, big plug, the originals. I own the Blues Brothers soundtrack right over here. It's oftentimes, if there's a road trip, goes with me.
Oh yeah. And the original, that's what I'm saying. I would say the Blues Brothers franchise the two movies did not make a bad soundtrack. They're both great.
Yeah, and James, to jump in on Blues Brothers 2000, there's a lot of great songs on the soundtrack, but when John Goodman, Dan Aykroyd, and Joe Morton do the cover of Funky Nassau,
yeah,
that's amazing. And then even when Joe Morton does John the Revelator, I mean,
well,
there are a lot of good songs on the soundtrack, just not a good movie.
Hands down, one of my favorite blues songs of all time, and I've heard different covers of it. I actually shared with you all a cover that was done by a Native American father and son performers that are touring right now, which I'd love to see him at live. But Matt the Guitar Murphy does his cover of The Blues Don't Bother Me, which is one of my favorite blues songs. And it is probably, and I know he's not the one that originated it, but it's probably my favorite version, because he really just hits everything that I want in that song. The idea that, yes, the blues happen. I mean, the tragedy of life happens, but have fun with it, because that's what you got anyway. And that song is one of my favorite songs. And if you've never heard, you can look it up on YouTube. If you don't know about the soundtrack, YouTube, make sure you're getting Matt Guitar Murphy's The Blues Don't Bother Me. It is one of my favorite performances of that song, Blues Brothers 2000 soundtrack. And so I do love that soundtrack. I defend the movie because of the soundtrack. We had to get that movie to get that soundtrack, so that had to be on my soundtrack list.
All right. Well, for mine, this is one of those more controversial opinions of mine.
Chad, I don't think, and I don't mean to interrupt here, but I didn't know Birth of a Nation had a soundtrack.
Oh God.
It's
I'm
usually
not
me that
commenting.
makes those clunk.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not even touching that one. I'm not.
No, I just assumed since it was coming from Chad.
Boy,
I mean, I wouldn't
Say
do
it
it.
one more time. Now, where's his address? What's his location? Where's he work?
But in all honesty,
get to it, DW.
They ever
one of-
get back? They ever get those tiki torches back in stock for you, Chad? Go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, and I used to own it on cassette tape. I never went to get it on CD. Was the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack. I actually prefer the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack over Ghostbuster 1. I know Ray Parker, the song's iconic. It really is. But for me, On Our Own is one of my favorite songs of all time by Bobby Brown.
I'm actually going to agree with you, Chad, because the first soundtrack, you have Ray Park, you have a couple other ones.
Yeah,
They're not bad, but for a soundtrack,
yeah,
I mean, Oingo Boingo, Flesh and Blood is another one. I play it every Halloween.
yeah. Flesh and Blood by Oingo Boingo is amazing.
Where is that at in the movie?
It is. They use basically the sting from it. Oh shoot, where is it?
Barely.
It's barely in them. No, I agree, but
Yeah.
I love that song.
And
Spirit,
so Flesh and Blood.
Spirit's another one.
Yeah, Flesh and Blood by Oingo Boingo, Spirit by Dougie Fresh,
Yeah.
Flip City by Glenn Frey, and then Love is a Cannibal
Want
by
to Know
Elton
Why.
John, and then the
I
only
actually
Yeah.
tagged Elton John. I may have done it through the Bonehead account. I don't know, but I tagged Elton John, going, "Listen, I want to see your last performance. I've seen you perform before. Please, though, if you do perform and I come, can I tag you before the show? I'll give you a week's notice. This is the show I'm going to be at, and I want you to perform Love is a Cannibal live, because I'm betting nobody's requested that recently.
yeah.
Can you imagine how cool it would be?"
He hasn't gotten back to you, has he?
No, he didn't. He didn't respond to my
Yeah.
tweet.
Yeah.
What is he busy with?
But my one
I'm touring right
criticism, my one criticism of the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack, of course, the big end scene with the Statue of Liberty walking down into Times or into New York is they're playing Jackie Wilson's Higher and Higher.
Your love.
But the soundtrack doesn't have that. It has a remix of it from Howard Huntsberry.
Well,
And
slight
it is-
correction that they're actually, because I've had to watch it 5,000 times the last year and a half. They play it with the toaster scene. The version that they're playing when it's walking is when statue's walking is not the Jackie Wilson version.
So that must be the Howard Huntsberry version.
It's not if you go back and listen, because every time I listen to it, I was like, man, it just doesn't sound good. And finally figured it out the other day. It's a totally different version. When
all right, I'm gonna need to go back and
walking.
listen to it, because all I can hear is the "Your Love" in the echo chamber of the thing, and that's what. And Howard Huntsberry's version is playing the Jackie Wilson one. It's just they've changed the tune and it doesn't work in my opinion.
I don't know.
It was
but it's not Jackie
89. We
Wilson
like to
version.
remix things.
Yeah, it's not the Jackie Wilson version when the statue's actually walking.
But I really do feel like Ghostbusters 2, especially because for me in the 80s, I was into rap and hip hop. I had Run DMC, I had Public Enemy, I had Heavy D and the Boys, I had Fresh Prince, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. That's all I listened to. I didn't get into rock and roll till I was a teenager, and then subsequently ska, blah 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 blah. It went on and on and on. I was a straight hip hop rap kid when I was so
it was because of the Ninja Turtles, right? That turtle rap turned you.
Oh my God, the Bartman, James.
Oh, that's true.
Do the
Well,
Bart Man,
actually,
if you
I'll
can.
be honest, Chad. I'm with you though. Again, on the soundtracks, because I can remember for one of my birthdays, whatever year it came out, for that birthday that year, my parents got me the cassette of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle soundtrack for the motion picture, and I can still quote some songs from that because "Busting Your Bubble" is what we do.
Yeah, I had that one as well. But the big thing I liked about Ghostbusters 2 was the fact that it mixed that hip hop, and then it had that really obscure, crazy rock pop that I like, that Oingo Boingo and Glenn Frey, that I'm still a fan of to this day.
And honestly, that Elton John tune, I said, and I was being honest, I don't
Love is a
know,
Cannibal's great.
but it is definitely, I don't want to say, I'm saying this the wrong way because it sounds like I'm being derogatory, but it is a snapshot in time of, I don't want to say coked out Elton John, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's something that was a 1980s, late 80s, we got issues going on, Elton John. Because he belts that song.
I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen. We talked about this on a previous episode.
Yeah.
I need to go back and re-listen because I don't have the same. I just don't remember all the songs.
Woman is an animal, and love is love is love. Love is a cannibal.
Yeah,
Whose turn is it?
Yours.
All right. So while I actually was meant to have this pulled up, but as far as movies go, there's few that have had more influence on me, and this is really on the nose. And I was trying to pull up all the songs from it, but I probably listened to this in the mid-90s daily, over and over.
Oh, Chad, he's getting ready to do the soundtrack to White Man's Burden.
Guys,
you know what? It is a jump because you're close. You're close.
I had the White Man's Burden soundtrack, and I am not joking. I am.
What is 100... on? I literally pulled a movie out of a hat. What is on that soundtrack?
Tripping Billies by Dave Matthews Band. The Hootie and the Blowfish did a cover of a Roy Orbison song. I am blanking on what it is now, but I owned it. I listened to it repeatedly. It didn't make my list though, but I did own the White Man Burden soundtrack.
You picked a more obscure. I'm going to talk about a soundtrack I love that's really obscure that I don't think many people know, but you may have beat me there.
Joe, not to jump on your pit.
That's okay. Go ahead.
But and then you can go ahead. This is one of those rare instances where I had the soundtrack. I have never, ever seen the damn movie. It was Dream Baby. Roy Orbison was Dream Baby. And then regarding Stephen Bob Blues Traveler, I mean, Bush was on there, Howard Shore, Meat Puppets. Anyway, Joe, what was your pick?
My soundtrack is the only soundtrack that not only has Kool and the Gang, but it also has the Statler Brothers, Chuck Berry, Al Green, Ricky Nelson. I'm, of course, talking about Pulp Fiction. It's probably one of the best soundtracks of all time, and it's hard not to hear Jungle Boogie and not think of Pulp Fiction.
Statler Brothers.
Counting flowers on the wall. That don't bother me at all. Urge Overkill had a big hit with the cover of Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. If you guys remember, the video was the Pulp Fiction. It was when they do someone performing and then have scenes from the movie of whatever the movie was on. I don't need to tell you about Pulp Fiction. I don't think if you're listening to this, you pretty much know the plot, but it's still, my CD is right over there every once in a while. Actually, I haven't listened to it in a while, but I'm telling you, I listened to that a lot in the mid 90s, probably around 95, 96, late 94 when I got it. When I finally saw the movie, I actually didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on video, which I'm assuming you two did as well.
Yeah. Pulp
Fiction blew me over.
Bono loved it.
What?
You said you two as well.
You too as well. So Pulp Fiction just blew me away. I still say Pulp Fiction is one of the most important films, if not the most important film in the last 25, 30 years.
It definitely launched a lot of imitators. I don't think without Pulp
he
Fiction,
he still launches imitators with. It's hard to see a commercial without seeing that music from Kill Bill on it. And there's a credit card commercial. I don't even remember the name of the song. But Tarantino has an absolute Midas touch when it comes to saying, nope, that thing right there, we're going to put it right here. There it is. I loved the soundtrack to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I actually listened to that a lot more than I have Pulp Fiction in the last year. But oftentimes before COVID, I would sit in my office and just play it. And I've played it here too. Rambling Gambling Man.
I know you probably love Quentin Tarantino more than I do, and I really appreciate him. But there is something. I think you're right.
He has a Midas touch.
His soundtracks, because Kill Bill, that you're right, that dun dun dun,
and everyone imitates it.
Yeah, I am ready. Literally, there's certain ones, I don't care what movie it is, he puts together something to where if I got to go kill somebody, I can put on Kill Bill and I'll be okay.
Yeah, he's just a genius when it comes to picking music for his films, and it's absolutely perfect. I mean, and if he's doing something instrumental, he's going to pick that from someplace too. It's going to be a little bit of an Ennio Morricone thing from this obscure Italian film that he's going to bring over here that we've never heard, but once we put it on there, oh my God, I can't imagine it any other place.
Yeah.
So I just think Pulp Fiction is one of the best soundtracks of all time. That's it.
James is going to argue that he prefers the version that was in Beer Fest.
What? Huh?
I don't know. He froze after he said Beer Fest. There he is.
Oh, he's back now.
He's back. I don't remember the soundtrack
From Outer Space. It had Jungle Boogie in it.
Although, if we're talking about, if we're going to talk about disco soundtracks, what's Muppets from Space has a good soundtrack. Movie's not very good.
Well, yeah, one gets by.
James, you next?
I guess I am next.
Are you drunk?
No, I'm very nearly sober. To quote Futurama and their Christmas episode, we are very nearly sober. Anyway, speaking of sound,
I know these guys, they got nothing.
They got nothing. I want to talk about a movie that I don't think works without the soundtrack. And it's not a movie a lot of people love. We've mentioned on the show before. Chad and I have talked about it quite a bit. But I was watching it again, and I bought the soundtrack because I love the soundtrack. And I thought, if you pull some of these songs out of the movie is poorer. And it's Bring Out the Dead. Bring Out the Dead. The Nick Cage, Scorsese, the soundtrack.
I don't remember the soundtrack. By the way, Martin Scorsese is the other filmmaker who does the best needle drop picks.
It is. I love the movie, but I love the soundtrack as well because, as I said, I love all types of music. And if you want we're going to throw darts at a wall, but like you said, masterfully.
Mm-hmm.
This movie does that. Van Morrison, The Clash, REM, Johnny Thunders, UB40, and we all know what the UB40 song is because they only did one.
It's Red Wine. I don't know. I swear to God, I need to go back and watch it.
The Vandellas, the Marvelettas. It's got doo-wop. Yeah. It's got, TB Sheets by Van Morrison is not a Van Morrison song that a ton of people know, or maybe they do, and I'm just not a big enough Van Morrison fan. But that song, if you want to establish a depressing scene, the entire song, if you read the backstory or the quote-unquote story of the song, it's about a guy whose significant other, somebody significant in his life, is dying of tuberculosis, but he can't take being around them because he can't handle it. Like he's worried he'll get it or something like that. And it's just a what do you do type song, but it's really, really depressing, and it works so well in that movie. But then on top of that, the scenes where he's freaking out and everything's speeding up and he's doing all that stuff, when they use The Clash, I'm So Bored with the USA, or Janie Jones from The Clash, What's the Frequency, all of that stuff works in the film. It's got The Who on the soundtrack. One of my favorite is it's got I'm a Japanese Sandman, which is this 1950s kind of doo-wop song. And you would think, okay, you went from The Clash earlier, but in the context of that film, when it's trying to highlight how fractured he is becoming, how bad everything is getting, and how he's just trying to make it from point A to point B, that soundtrack completely works to further that film. And I was sitting there watching it, and Bring Out the Dead. It's actually a really important movie to me, just because of when I saw it, what I was going through, and what I've sometimes been through since. That movie actually says something to me. That being said,
James has had a lot of drug overdoses.
I've caused a lot.
I mean, no more than the average.
I've caused a lot. You dare four elementary school kids to take bottles of Vivarin.
I'm glad that's where that went. That's where that went.
There is only one drug I put into my system, sir. One lovely drug.
There's only one pill that James takes. And what pill is that, James?
Well, it's actually one for my thyroid, but I do like caffeine.
No, he only one pill. It's the gospel.
Pill. That's true. But anyway, Bring Out the Dead. We talked about the movie. We talked about all that stuff. But the soundtrack, if you haven't seen the movie, you're gonna pick up on what I'm talking about. It's a weird soundtrack, man. But that
I
movie
need
is
to go. I
better
haven't
for
seen
it.
it since I saw it in the theater when I was at Moorhead. I just haven't seen it in years and years and years. So it's been over 20 years. I need to go back and revisit it now that I'm older, because I at the time didn't enjoy it or didn't get it.
I saw it in the middle of quite frankly some depression and some anxiety, some insomnia, and that movie spoke to me at that time. And now when I go back and watch it, I pick up on other things. Plus the cast on it's a lot of fun.
But real
and by
quick,
fun, it's effective.
needle drop music is the music that's just a term the industry uses for film, that like they take a song and put it in a movie. And I gave Tarantino credit, but I have to give the other person who I think is probably just as good, if maybe not better, but he doesn't get as much credit for it, is Martin Scorsese.
And if you want a more modern example, which I mean, those are both modern, obviously, but if you want a really pop culture modern day reference, James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
that's all needle drop is fantastic.
Prime example of
he took the third pick.
I was gonna say, because that was one I thought about, and I didn't do it because I assumed one of you.
Yeah, I had it narrowed down to 2, so I guess I'll go with another one. But yeah,
but no, you're absolutely right, because Volume 1 and Volume 2, and I guess we'll get Volume 3. Those, I mean, it shouldn't work sometimes, but it does. Like Cherry Bomb. Yep. Playing as they march out. Like if you listen to the lyrics of that, it really doesn't make sense for an entire team to walk out to that. But boy, it works. And it made me go, I want to go listen to Cherry Bomb again.
Oh, you know what? No, I'll tell you, it's the best example actually is a Martin Scorsese film. Layla from the mob at the end with all the death scene as people are being murdered in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Montage. Layla. Well, that not the part. It's when the instrumental kicks in. Down. Anyway. Now?
So no, not now.
Later?
No.
Later?
Not with you.
Gospel.
All right. So
you got your back pill. You got your neck pill. What you need is the gospel. Go ahead, Chad.
Thank you.
We're waiting.
Oh, he talked over me 20 minutes ago. Keep going. What is it, Chad?
Whenever you're ready, Chad.
The movie I'm going to kill you. The movie that I'm going to pick.
Nothing fastens the cholesterol wheel.
Is again one of those movies where I can listen to the soundtrack and I don't need the movie. And in terms of the soundtrack, and it doesn't get credit for actually making the movie, in my opinion. It's Jim Carrey's The Mask. It was one of those soundtracks that I listened to repeatedly in the 90s. It came out right around the time I was getting into, if a song has a brass section, I'm automatically hooked and I'm going to listen to it. This was at the height of big band, and they incorporated the hell out of that into the Mask soundtrack. I love every song on it. The Business of Love from Domino is great. Harry Connick Jr.'s best song, I Could Only Whisper Your Name, is on the soundtrack. Heidi Ho, K7 does a great version of the Cab Calloway song. Highly recommend checking it out. And then you have Brian Setzer's orchestra. You have Tony Tone, Escape, Fishbone, and Royal Crown Review. The Let the Good Time Roll by Fishbone is phenomenal. It is a great cover of an already great song, and Fishbone took it to another level. And again, Royal Crown Review, Hey Pachuco, which if you know from the movie, when he goes into the club and he twirls the band around and they start doing the swing and he does his little dance with Cameron Diaz, that is the Royal Crown Review actually performing Hey Pachuco in the movie. It is phenomenal. The one thing about the soundtrack that I never did get is they felt the need to bookend it. The soundtrack begins with a hip hop version of Cuban Pete being sung by Jim Carrey, and then it ends with the actual movie version of Cuban Pete with Jim Carrey, which Jim Carrey's version of Cuban Pete, I actually love. I'll be the first to say it is my favorite version of Cuban Pete is the Jim Carrey version from The Mask. And I have listened to all versions repeatedly, but I wore this CD out when I was a teenager. I played it constantly. I would be down in my room needing to unwind, de-stress, because I had a shitty social life and my teenage years were crap. I would play this on loop just to make myself feel better. So it does have one of those personal touches to me. So I had to mention The Mask for one of my picks of this discussion. I froze, didn't I?
No. You're good.
Yeah,
Now
just
you
your
froze.
face. I mean,
Now you're froze.
I
You wrote
can't
a
tell the
second ago, though.
difference. I mean, it's actually, he looks like it's one of those still pictures from like, when they get him on the news, when they're
Yeah.
at a press conference, because it's got the microphone in it. If he's only missing the finger was all he was missing.
What did I miss? What did it?
Oh, nothing. The nuclear codes, those didn't come out at all. I mean,
No, you're good. I mean, we heard everything you had to say. You're good.
yeah. Also, by the way, and James Gunn just tweeted that he is that the soundtrack for Guardians 3 is actually done. The screen slightly before the movie starts shooting.
Well, that's good. He's got a plan.
He does have a plan. So, like Chad, well, probably not like Chad, but this movie is another 90s film. A lot of these are from the 90s, but it's also we're 40 years old or in our 40s.
What?
Well, I am.
My third pick is also from the 90s.
So I was going back and forth for my third pick, and well, actually, but I'm going to go with this one. It's another one that I had the soundtrack for, listen to it all the time, and we've had the director and the writer of the movie on the show. I want to talk about The Crow. Either one of you all have the soundtrack to The Crow?
No, but everybody I knew did.
Yeah,
I mean that positively.
No,
Yeah,
it was.
I didn't have to have
It was huge.
I didn't have to have it because I could look over and be like, "Hey, can I borrow your Crow CD?" And four people go, "Yeah, you can borrow mine." So,
I didn't have to have it. I had several, just like James, I had several friends who let me borrow it.
Everyone had it. Everyone had it. It's absolutely true. And
the songs that I really liked from the soundtrack, I actually had on different albums. So
right.
Yeah.
So we had the Stone Temple Pilots, 9 Inch Nails, The Cure, the Rollins Band, Rage Against the Machine, Pantera, Jesus, and I'm sorry, Helmet.
Man, 1994 was a good year for soundtracks. Apparently,
it was. Well, I think it was I think it was a good business model year for soundtracks.
Yeah.
I mean, we hadn't got to the point where, as we've talked about on previous shows, the people actually went out to a store and purchased something physical from the store, something tangible, and brought it back and listened to it. And at the time, I mean, CDs were huge, right? CDs don't quote me on this, but I know vinyl is back with a vengeance. Does vinyl now outsell CDs for people who actually go buy things, tangible things?
I don't know the answer, but as much as I hear music people talk about when their vinyl collections,
I think so. I mean, it's easier for me to buy CDs that were 10, 15 bucks 20 years ago, much less 5 years ago, to just buy. I did it the other day. There was several Stone Temple Pilot CDs that I didn't have and a bunch of other stuff, and I just got them from somebody off eBay. I've done it several times during the last year's plague of shit. I've been sitting around going, I actually don't have the CD for that, and I don't need to have it in vinyl because that's the last thing I need is my kids scratching the shit out of something else here and me having to worry about going over there and moving it. I get it. It's cool, but it doesn't really affect me. The Crow was a huge movie on me. It had a huge impact. I loved it. It was like nothing else. I remember reading reviews and people bitching about it being dark and it's another dark movie, but I don't think that's it at all. I think Alex Proyas had a, I hate using the word vision, but I use it a lot, had a vision, and we had something completely different. And on top of that, not only did we have a successful movie, we had the legend that built out of the movie because of the tragedy of Brandon Lee. And the soundtrack was fantastic for the time.
Yeah.
I think if you show someone The Crow now, it probably doesn't have the same connection. I think the movie holds up, actually, but I don't know that they connect to it like someone of my generation.
Talking about my Joey. No, that's different.
All right, who's next?
James.
I'm going to go with one. You all may have seen it. You may hate the movie. That's fine. It's an odd little movie, but I love the soundtrack. It introduced me to a couple bands that I followed.
James is going to talk about The Pest.
No, I'm going to talk about. I guess because a lot of people haven't seen this movie, I'll give a summary of the movie before I talk about the soundtrack. So the plot to this movie is odd.
There, it's done. So what's the soundtrack?
It's an academic obsessed with roadside attractions, and his daughter is a TV star, and he convinces her to get away from Hollywood for a while, go on this road trip with him, and they're going to catalog all the weird roadside attractions.
Easy Rider?
They end up in a very small, basically an old gold rush town that literally is just struggling to stay relevant, who claims to have the largest ice cream cone.
Oh, the madness of King George.
Yeah, they end up breaking down. They can't get out. They've got to wait till they can get the parts and to repair the car. And so the daughter just starts to basically wander around the town and meet different people. And that's basically the plot to the film. She meets these weird people stuck in this little town. They're not weird in that it's not a horror movie or anything. They just don't have anything to do.
All right. I actually don't know what he's guessing. And I know this isn't it, but I really want to say even cowgirls get the blues.
This film starred a lot of people that went on to do nothing
They
relevant.
have big thumbs.
It was 1998, and the film stars people, you'll never know these names. They didn't do anything else. Sarah Gilbert, Ethan Suplee, John Hurd, Kate Hudson, Brendan Sexton, Casey Affleck, and Christina Ricci. It's Desert Blue.
Never heard of it.
Desert Blue is this odd little drama comedy. It's not as good as, but it's in the same kind of vein of films Christina Ricci was doing at the time. Opposite of Sex is probably the best one. But these weird, quirky kind of roles. In this movie, she plays somebody that's obsessed with blowing things up. Like, that's what she does. She gets bored because she's in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and she just wanders around and makes pipe bombs. And everybody knows she does it because it's a small town, but she ain't hurt anybody, so why are you going to get in the way? So it's the reason, though, that I love it. When I first saw the movie on VHS, I rented it at a place off of the University of Kentucky campus. You used to rent things. It was called a Blockbuster, and they had it in their independent section. And the soundtrack on it, though, doesn't have, I mean, it's got some names, but they were kind of indie bands at the time. Rilo Kiley is the band that I followed that I first heard on this soundtrack. They do a song called The Frug in it. They also did another song for it called 85. They were discovered, and their first album was financed by Dave Foley of Kids in the Hall. He was actually filming a show. He was filming news radio around that time, and he stopped by a place, and he actually stopped to hear the band after them, but he loved them. They performed for years. They broke up a couple years ago, which was a bummer because I really did like their stuff. That being said, the soundtrack has Rockets from the Crypt, not a huge name to conjure with, but their song is called Break It Up. Honk If You're Lonely, which is kind of this country.
Honk If You're Horny.
No, it's Honk If You're Lonely Tonight. The band is the Silver Jews.
Horny Tonight.
It is a
no, it's tomorrow. Honk if you're horny tomorrow.
It is a country type ballad, but then you go, What the Hell Are You Crying For by Nina Persson and Nathan Larson. It's a weird mix of songs on there. They actually have To Sir With Love by Lulu is on this soundtrack. It's just Sir With Love. And also another one that I really love, Cracklin' Water, which is by
Downtown,
which is by a band called Opiate. Cracklin' Water. They're weird songs, but they work so well in this movie. Nobody has really seen this movie besides me. I met in my life 4 other people that went, "Oh, you've seen it? It's good."
I've actually never heard of it. I will say that I've looked up the director, and I'm not a fan of his because he's the one who brought us
TV now, right?
Teen Mom and 16 and Pregnant.
Yeah.
He brought us those gems.
That being said, that movie,
in defense of them, I've never watched them, nor will I ever. So they could
same
be
here.
amazing. They could be amazing.
Well,
I'm
and that
betting
being said,
16 and Pregnant.
That being said, in all fairness, he made some movies early on in his career. None of them were huge hits. Desert Blue's not a huge hit. It was a little independent film. One of his films did win some awards, and then he went on to do reality TV. And
it was American Psycho 2, right? That's the movie you're referring to that won the awards?
No. What was this movie that actually did get he won it like it's not a
probably Hurricane Streets. Is that what you're thinking of?
That's the probably best known one. But
Just the Sun.
Tornado Alley.
He was going to name it Hurricane, but then Denzel Washington ruined everything.
Tornado Alley is a better title than Hurricane Street.
Anyway, no, I'm not
Living
defending
on
the
Thunder
director.
Road.
The movie is not flawless, but the soundtrack, I listened to the soundtrack over and over again because it was such an eclectic mix, and some of the songs on there, you know, they I don't know if they necessarily fit in the film, but they were great tunes to listen to when you're just sitting around. So I don't know if I can recommend Desert Blue, but if you watch the movie, you're gonna hear some songs and be like, yeah, that's an interesting choice for a song there. By the way, Break It Up by it's played when she's bombed stuff, because she goes out and bombs stuff. And the backstory for the local town is
Thanks, James.
the backstory for the Brandon Sexton kind of plays the love interest that she starts to develop, but he's obsessed with building a water park in the middle of the desert because that was what his father's dream was, and his father dies. And so he becomes obsessed with accomplishing his father's goal. And it's a small town in the middle of nowhere. And it's got a really weird ending and all of that stuff. But it's, again, as we talked about, these are 90s films, and it's just a weird 90s film that I don't know. I mean, maybe you could get it on Hulu or Netflix today, but I don't think you could approach a major studio and be like, picture this: teenage talent in a Hollywood decides to go on, or is forced to go on a road trip with her father, who's an academic, and they're just going to take photos and encounter these weird people. Oh, is it a horror movie? No, they're just quirky people in a small town that don't have anything to do.
James, you can watch
Hours. It's not going to happen.
You can watch Desert Blues free on Tubi.
I honestly, like I said, I have it on VHS over here. I do.
It's also on Amazon Prime for us, for those who are listening in the States.
I'm not saying rush to see it because it's not in my top 20 films of all time, but I'm glad I watched it. It was fun and weird. And
all right. Next.
I don't know if y'all heard. I don't know if y'all how much of the Mask chunk you heard.
No, you actually did. Your audio never went out, at least not for me. So
okay. So I want to talk about, this is one of these soundtracks where I love the soundtrack and absolutely just do not like the movie. I actually got the soundtrack first and went and saw the movie, and I'm like, I just needed the soundtrack. This soundtrack of this movie is quintessential mid-90s pop rock. There's nothing, I don't think, and you all can argue with me, but I don't think there is an album that better defines mid-90s pop rock more than Empire Records.
But people love that movie.
I don't understand why. I
Christie
never
loves that
did
movie.
get into it.
And you know,
a lot watching it.
It has a huge cult following. I mean, what is the day?
I know it does.
What's the day that person showing up? It's an actual date, and it happened on my social media. I was like, I don't even know what the hell this is. It's blah 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 day. Where that famous person.
I am shocked.
People love that movie.
I am shocked that it has the following that it does. I just never cared for it. It's just one of those movies. I know that I was in that audience. I was at that age where that movie was supposed to speak to me. It never did. But the sound.
You preferred Airheads, right?
Yes, actually, I did.
I prefer Airheads, and I don't even like Airheads.
Yeah.
They made a book of that movie. It's my favorite line. It's the only line I remember from the movie. But we want a copy of Moby Dick, the book or the movie. They made a book of that movie.
But
the only line I remember.
That damn movie, both of them they're loaded with cast and broadcast news. What was it called to get Empire Records?
Empire Records, yeah.
Sorry. As one of my favorite favorite actors, Anthony LaPaglia.
Yeah. He's in it. He plays the record store owner. And I mean, it has Liv Tyler, Robin Tooney. I think I can't pronounce her. I've always on how to say her name.
It's a who's who of 90s people.
It was. And the soundtrack is the same. And it was one of those ones, just like The Mask. When I was done with The Mask, I'd pop in this. But honestly, a lot of the songs in here always put me in a pretty sad mood. But Till I Hear It From You from the Gin Blossoms is quintessential 90s music.
Oh God, the Gin Blossoms.
Yeah. And then one of my favorite songs from the 90s, Crazy Life from Toad the Wet Sprocket, that's on there as well. And then you've got Better Than Ezra, Cracker. You've got
Better Than Ezra.
I have Better Than Ezra CD, so I can't shit on it.
Yeah. I remember running through the back. Anyway.
You got the Cranberries, you got and then you've got some obscure 90s bands like the Ape Hangers, the Innocent Mission, Mises, Lustra, Evan Dando. I loved all of these people.
I went to school with Evan Dent. I don't know.
I mean, he flunked out and then he died of heroin.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even mention Edwin Collins' "Please" or Coyote Shivers. "Sugar High" is a great song. Empire, and the other thing about the Empire Records soundtrack, again, when you would go buy physical CDs, it had a really cool CD. It was like a bright orange case. It was like, ooh, look, it's different from all the others.
I don't remember the sound.
It's kind of like, Chad, honestly, I was saying about this the other day. It's kind of like when video cassettes would do special covers to get you to pick them up off the video. Because I remember, and at one point I owned, because I bought it used at a video store, the rental for Johnny Mnemonic.
Mm-hmm.
The videotape was orange, I think, but more importantly it was the front cover was clear plastic, but it had Keanu Reeves, but his head was open and you saw the spool of the tape, which makes sense for Johnny Mnemonic because he carries video effectively in his head.
Yeah.
And it's a stupid marketing gimmick, but did I pick up Johnny Mnemonic and be like, yeah, I want to see this? Yep.
Now
sure.
I gotta go check that out. The only other one I can remember is E.T. E.T. I have the original one too. When they first, it was a big deal when E.T. came to VHS and the clip
because they didn't release it. I can remember.
There was they wouldn't release it.
Wasn't there an ET version on VHS where you could push and his finger lit up?
Well, we didn't have that fancy shit back in the holler.
And by the way, we're getting off
Joe's
topic.
never seen E.T. He only was given a copy of
I
Mac
give him the videotape. And I've been trying to stick it over here in this laser disc for the last 10 fucking years, and it won't work worth a damn.
He saw Pod People and they told him it was E.T.
Why did
anybody care about that sumbitch and want to feed him them Skittles?
And we're getting off topic, but one of the things that I really wanted to get more than anything, and the movie's terrible, was the Dead Pit. Because I don't know if you remember the Dead Pit VHS K. It had a zombie coming out of the grave, which had nothing to do with the Dead Pit, by the way. And you push the button and his eyes lit up. And I'm like, oh, I want that case. Movie's terrible. But
another one's Bleeders with Rucker Hauer. It had to bleed and it would ooze one way or the other in the case.
That's awesome. But back on the soundtracks, Empire Record soundtrack, I really do. It's 1995. I was 15 years old. I needed this soundtrack because it literally was one great song after another. And I can't connect it. This is the one exception where I say I can't connect it to the movie because I play the songs. I don't see anything from the movie because again, I saw the movie once and I'm like, not my cup of tea. And then I just went to listen to the soundtrack.
So I have a question for you all as we wrap up. What's the best soundtrack of all time?
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, I can't answer that. I've got some honorable mentions.
Well, I'm going to tell you what it is.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
No, it is.
I was going to go off on Titanic again.
Oh my God.
This is it.
I wish my heart wouldn't go on.
And honestly, I'm not actually being sarcastic. You could make an argument, I guess, for some Elvis films, but A Hard Day's Night simply has to be the best soundtrack of all time.
Okay. I'm not going to argue.
Huh? Well, there's a couple.
How about Yellow Submarine?
No, I think it really'd have to be the Hard Day. I'd have to be Hard Day's Night. I mean, I could go down the list of all of the, it's the Beatles. What would be more influential than that? I mean, maybe you get close to Grease, but A Hard Day's Night. I'm trying to actually find all the list of all the songs for A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, it's the Beatles. You can't argue with the Beatles, but I don't necessarily
tell me why I should know better. I love her. Maybe you know what? It may be Help, James.
Help for good, man.
Help. It may be Help. A Hard Day's Not's the better movie, but it might be Help.
I mean, you have, like I said, you have Grease, you have Saturday Night Fever, you have, I don't have an argument against that comment, but there are several in contention for the best soundtrack of all time. Prince's Batman soundtrack.
The what?
The soundtrack.
Oh, I thought you said the Princess Batman. I was like, what the hell?
No.
Is the Princess Batman? Actually, as far as if I know, James, you're about to say something. There's a couple of more that Oh Brother, Where Art Thou and The Big Chill are probably two of my.
The Lion King
mentions.
soundtrack. I mean,
Yeah, I wanted to also mention, because it's an area that doesn't get much love, and I think it is important if we're talking about best soundtrack. And I know you all are not as much into video games as I am, but there is one thing that we should probably mention. I feel we should mention is the Bond films, because the Bond films are known for having at least a song.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a classic Bond theme. It's been
Right.
remixed by Moby. But there is always that opening Bond
You
number.
got stung by Obi?
What?
I don't know.
Oh,
Sorry, I was thinking
A
of
Moby? No, you're doing Eminem. Moby, you can get stopped by Obi because of Obi Thrice, who is another performer
Yeah.
who was part of the same
These
album.
people are way more cool than me. Go ahead.
But the what I wanted to say was the Bond video games, once there was enough technology to where it was an 8-bit and they could do actual opening songs on there, the Bond video games have some pretty solid Bond themes now that are performed by some actual Joss Stone for the video game James Bond in Bloodstone did I'll Take It All, which is a pretty effective
I'm
Bond
sure it is.
theme.
It's just a funny. Yeah, keep going.
And then you have the other one that comes to mind. Maya did Everything or Nothing, which was also the name of the game. And then there is also when they redid From Russia with Love, which Sean Connery came back and did new voice work for it, and they adapted that video to a video game. It was on the original Xbox, so it's been a while. But they actually had somebody come back and do not just the From Russia with Love theme, which is also in there, but they did a new song for it as well. And I'm blanking on who did that, but it's somebody very, very famous. And it is so there's these new soundtracks, so to speak, and they announced that they're re-releasing this Bond song collection. And I have the last one that they could do on one CD, which is about the end of the Pierce Brosnan era was when I bought it. So they're re-releasing all these, and I actually tweeted to Sony Music going, "That's great. I'll buy it again. Is it going to have the video themes on it?" Because they did release music videos for these. They did all of that. So we may be, and I know some of these have been around for a while, but video game theme songs are their own little soundtracks, or their own little world, and there have been some that have had releases. So I wanted to bring that up. And there's one other one that we didn't mention that I wanted to at least give an honorable mention to, because if I ever need to start a fire or anything, I know what song or what album I'm going to use, what soundtrack I'll use for that. It's the Matrix soundtrack.
Yeah.
The Matrix soundtrack has some
Chemical
people,
Brothers.
as people we're not supposed to talk about it anymore, but Marilyn Manson, Rock is Dead, Minefields by Prodigy, Club to Death is on there. The song Dragula, the remix they did for the movie called the Hot Rod Herman remix that Rob Zombie did for that movie. The Matrix is a snapshot in time for me. It was 1999. It was over the top stuff,
Which we're going to talk about in a future episode.
the cool scenes that they bring into that. But it is one that I could put that CD in when I'm driving, and it's just, oh man, I'm there again. That's something about the power of the music they chose for that.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I'm sure you're going to have an argument against this, but I've been scrolling while James has been talking. I've been scrolling through a lot of lists, and a lot of them are ranking. They don't have Hard Day's Night on the list. Most of them do, but some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
But almost unanimously, a lot of them are saying either Superfly or Purple Rain is the best soundtrack of all time.
I was going to say Purple Rain. I almost put on my list because it is. There are people that love.
Yeah, Purple Rain. The album held up better than the movie.
Yeah.
But I think Shaft is another one that I don't know. Shaft won the Oscar.
Yeah, the song. Yeah. Another one, and it's not one that people automatically think, oh, the soundtrack to that, but I do love the soundtrack to Office Space.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another one. I'm not even looking it up, but here's the harder they come, the harder they fall. From it's for the harder they come, right? I have to Google it. That Jimmy, I can't think of his name. I can't, and somebody's gonna scream at me. Who's
Jimmy
listening.
Cliff.
Jimmy Cliff. Yeah, the harder they come. That's another great soundtrack.
That is on Esquire's list. Hard Day's Night is not on there. Help is Oh Brother Where Art Thou, Superfly, and The Graduate. Purple Rain Again.
Yeah.
These are all on, and a lot of them are showing up as Train Spotting showing up a lot. But
Yeah.
honestly,
Well,
yeah.
by the
No,
way,
I like the Train Spotting one. Actually, I thought about talking about it because it was on several of them, but I didn't own it.
I was going to say, by the way, the Office Space soundtrack, jumping back to that real quick. Oddly enough, Roy Orbison comes up, not Roy Orbison, I screwed that up, but whoever did, is it Johnny Page? Whoever did Take This Job and Shove It, the cover that they did with Biz Markie and Cannabis is one of my favorite songs from that album. Because I honestly always said, you know what, we need to remix from a country song to a little R&B number. Give me Biz Markie, best known for You Say He's Just a Friend, and let him have his way with that song.
Take This Job and Shove It. Yeah, it's Johnny Paycheck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but yeah, that and the other song that's on there. If
Johnny Paycheck's On the Tour Bus.
I knew it was
one of the best On the Tour Bus episodes.
Yeah.
Also from the creator, from Mike, what's his face?
Judge.
Creator Judge from Office Space. Johnny Paycheck's is one of the best ones.
It also has a Office Space soundtrack. Also, of course, has to have a cover from 9 to 5 on it. But more importantly, the song that most people know it for is, of course, "Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster."
And it does. I've heard. I don't know. I just don't know. Any other honorable mentions? I like Oh Brother Where Art Thou. That's another one where the music and the movie were almost as popular, if not the music wasn't even more popular than the movie.
I'll give Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back.
That's good. It's
A
good.
one.
How
many people our age did not listen to Because I Got High?
Actually, oddly enough, I listened to it about a week ago because I was just sitting there and it popped up. I listened to music on the background when I grade, and I was grading last week, and it just popped up in the feed where YouTube will jump from song to song, and then it went from that to what's the how many people would like to kick some? Yes, that was the next song it went to, and I was like, oh, this is great, and I was like, they're all Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah. Kevin Smith, he was one of those people who, he doesn't do it anymore, but his soundtracks from his View Askew-averse, I owned every one. So, Soul Coughing from Clerks, I could go on for Chasing Amy and Mallrats.
Well,
anyway.
and his use of, and he's another one maybe that we can talk about, because I think in Clerks 2, the fact that it ends on
Soul Asylum, isn't it?
Soul Asylum, yeah, Misery, Frustrated Incorporated, but yeah,
Did I say Soul Coughing? I did say Soul Asylum, right?
No, you said Soul Coughing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
Sorry,
But I mean,
Soul
that-
Asylum.
that
I
song-
just assumed there's about 15 bands you all mentioned tonight that I should know because I'm the same age that I didn't know.
I get Soul Coughing and Soul Asylum mixed up all the time. I apologize. Soul Asylum from Clerks.
Yeah, Soul Asylum.
But there's
Clerks
just
2 song was pretty good. They did a whole new one for Clerks 2.
I was going to say, by the way, one other song, a soundtrack that I have to give a shout out to because it is one that I can listen to and it does brighten my day every time. And it makes me a big nerd, and that's fine. I don't care. I have no regrets about it. The Muppet movie, the original one.
Yeah, but that's
Rainbow
almost
Connection.
Actually, it's not Rainbow Connection to me. It's the Electric Mayhem doing "Can You Picture That?" That and Moving Right Along.
Yeah.
Those songs, if I listen to
Those are
them,
better. You're right.
it automatically makes that
I don't
because
know that they're better. Guys, it's hard not to.
Rainbow Connection doesn't really have much of an effect on me. I should.
I
but
love
No,
Rainbow
Rainbow
Connection.
Connection
Rainbow
does have-
Connection's one of those that you can sing anywhere
Yeah.
in the.
I'm a
I
cynic
will
and all
make-
that stuff. And actually, the song by Gonzo, that where they're sitting in the desert and everything's kind of gone bad, and he begins the song with "There's not a word yet for old friends that just met," and I was like, God, that's a great line. Like it's being delivered by a
Paul
piece
Williams,
of
right?
yeah.
They're all Paul Williams.
They're
Yeah.
all
And
Paul
like I said,
Williams.
Rainbow Connection. I can hear Rainbow Connection. It will make me smile. It
You
also
know,
it also
I-
tugs at my heart. But moving right along, when I hear that, I'm just automatically going, I'm bouncing around.
Oh yeah,
It's
My
and that
point is that
the-
Rainbow Connection can be sang anywhere in the world. And I think people know that that's a Muppet song and they know what it is and they can sing along.
that's true. I mean, it's probably the best known, but I
That's the
do
best
love. Can you picture that? I think it goes back to my love of wordplay. That's why I love Eminem. I could give a shout out to 8 Mile because I think 8 Mile does have a great soundtrack, even the non-Eminem songs. But I love wordplay. And can you picture that? I mean, the Aurora Borealis shining down in Dallas. Can you picture that? Use it if you need it. Don't forget to feed it. I mean, there's so much.
No, you're right. But Paul Williams
in
was
that.
at the height of his cocaine game.
I would say, and by the way, jumping forward, I have to give it to Muppets Christmas Carol. That song, It Feels Like Christmas, deserves to be a Christmas Carol in and of itself. Remove it from that movie, listen to it. It's all about being with people you care about and the holidays and stuff like that. And I cannot listen to that song and not think, okay, yeah, the holidays are good. They do good. There's something about that time of year, and that song captures it for me. It's the Ghost of Christmas Present. And when they perform that, and Michael Caine, in that movie, it is so. Maybe it's just Muppet films in general, because even the new ones, the Jason Segel one, had tunes in it. It didn't quite hit the same level for me, but it had some fun tunes in it.
No, it does. It does. It does.
I mean,
Are you a man or a Muppet?
Are You Muppet was
Was
nominated for an
Oscar.
Academy Award. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe Muppet soundtracks deserve it. You even mentioned Muppets from Space. Maybe we just need to look at Muppet
If you
soundtracks.
like disco, Muppets from Space has a great soundtrack. If you like disco. I'm being specific, but it's true. Go back. It's got some. It rocks. It frolics. It goes.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Anything else for the good of the group?
No, people need to let us know what we missed. I love soundtracks. Seriously, if you have a soundtrack and you're like, how dare they not mention X? Seriously, tweet it to us at Bonehead Weekly.
Yep,
We're there.
absolutely.
I would
Find us
love.
on all
I
social
collect
media
soundtracks. I have shelves of them over here. Please, by all means, let me know where I dropped the ball.
Yep. All right, guys. This has been Bonehead Weekly Fun Side. No, it's just a regular Bonehead Weekly. What show are we doing again?
I don't know anymore. Is Zorro on?